I've been enjoying a very curious phenomenon that pervaded YouTube recently that involves discussion of the evergreen game Super Mario 64. Because of what started as a joke, we're now inundated with sincere and not so earnest videos talking about the creepy and unsettling true nature of Mario 64. This iceberg image was the catalyst, the meme that launched 1,000 video essays. It's like a wall in a dark basement, and everyone who ever grew up playing this game scrawled a rumor or legend concerning it. This is the graffiti of nostalgia, and it's taken on a life of its own. So, how did so many of these shared associations accumulate into this critical mass? I believe it relates to an idea put forward by Salvador Dali, the concept of the Paranoiac critical method. Though paranoia is typically an ill state of mind which creates suspicion of innocuous things, Dali's definition of it goes deeper. The most superficial example of Dali's method would suggest seeing familiar shapes in clouds. Of the painting Paranoiac Woman Horse, Dali says, "The double image, an example of which could be the image of a horse which is at the same time the image of a woman, can be prolonged, continuing the paranoiac process, the existence of another obsessional idea being sufficient for a third image to appear, the image of a lion, for example." And in the exhibition catalog for the 2004 Dali retrospective, Dawn Addis concludes that Dali understands paranoia as a delirium of interpretation. A single configuration can be read or interpreted in different ways, depending, as explained in Communication, Visage Paranoiac, on the particular interests or obsessions of the viewer. When Dali and Gala first began living together in Cadaqués, a woman named Lydia, who sold them their first home on Port Lligat, was observed by Dali. "Lydia possessed the most marvelously paranoiac brain, aside from my own, that I have ever known. She was capable of establishing completely coherent relations between any subject whatsoever, and her obsession of the moment with sublime disregard of everything else, and with a choice of detail and a play of wit so subtle and so calculating resourceful that it was often difficult not to agree with her on questions which one knew to be utterly absurd." The paranoiac critical method is the creation of associations between things that are unrelated. This often happens when we are children, when the world is new to us, and we form associations in this manner because of our limited experience. For Dali, these associations formed an obsession early on with a painting by Jean-François Millet titled The Angelus. The title refers to a bell that calls the faithful to prayer. For Dali, it had a disturbing and unique significance, as he recounts in his autobiography. "This painting produced in me an obscure anguish so poignant that the memory of those two motionless silhouettes pursued me for several years with the constant uneasiness provoked by their continual and ambiguous presence." The Angelus was the obsessive image of Dali's life. He wrote a book, The Tragic Myth of Millet's Angelus, in which he analyzes the painting through the paranoiac critical method. His interpretation goes so deep that he later had the Louvre x-ray the painting, and what they found confirmed Dali's tragic intuition. Millet had painted over the shape of a box, perhaps the coffin of a child. This brought the tragic myth of the Angelus full circle to Dali's own paranoiac interpretations regarding death. Yet this was simply a creative exercise for Dali, not meant to be a commentary on Millet's intentions. He took in the painting, filtered it, saturated it with his own associations, obsessions, and sensitivities, and produced great art. To bring it back to Mario 64 and the iceberg, these associations were made collectively, en masse. The vagueness of the limited graphics of the game left just enough to the imagination to question or wonder at their purpose or larger intent. Larger intent seems to be what these iceberg theories come down to. When something as elevated as Super Mario 64 is so ubiquitous in the childhood of so many, its admiration starts to take on an aspect of worship. This is something I went into in the first episode of The Index, on The Shining, that when people become so immersed in a fictional environment, they want to build more and more of a credible reality around it, to live in it. But sometimes that lore will leak into reality, only because so many people want it to. Much of these mysteries approach creepypasta levels of hokum, while others strike a familiar chord, reminding us things we may have wondered about as kids. Things that we imagined when confronted with a strange and sometimes frighteningly alien world. Dali used his method for creativity to make the iconic and unforgettable masterpieces he is known for. However, these days it seems people unwittingly utilize the same to extend their favorite media beyond the confines they were designed for. In this way, every copy of Super Mario 64 is personalized, because our own memories and associations have made each turn and texture relate to some distant memory of our lives. I'll give my own recollection about Mario 64 now. When I was a kid, there was a room in Big Boo's haunt that gave me such dread that I would close my eyes when passing through it. It was dark, had a low ceiling, with slight flooding. Something about that room reminded me of a place I've since forgotten. The puzzling over why some things in the game are a certain way are probably mostly due to the new frontier it was made in, 3D platforming. Why are the levels floating where they are? Most likely because it was easier. Other mysteries fall into the Paranoiac realm easily, such as seeing faces in the dirt. That one has been around for a long time. Yet some of the things on the iceberg seem to breathe new life into the game. The Wario apparition is a wonderful example of retroactively creating a folk legend. Don't forget Borges' story Tlan Ukbar Tertius Orbis, in which people embraced a fictional world to the extent they began to make it a reality. When we see something like the beta build of the game, or beta levels, they're familiar but quite different, and that of course makes us uneasy, or fascinated. It's like the dream house I mentioned in the episode on the backrooms. A subtle difference is more potent at creating a dream space than something more outlandish. I can even see a definite connection to the new fixation on liminal spaces, those realms of the distantly familiar but eerily altered. The interest in them are also a product of the wider paranoia in the Dalinian sense. Since video games are part of the landscape of our childhood and adult lives, they rightly come with the same traveler's tales that came from exploring the real world. It's a lot of fun to watch this whole thing unfold, to see people embrace the mysteries that all of us who played the game had, at least subconsciously, felt. And for every game that kids grow up with in the same way, there is the same level of paranoiac personalization. The ease with which one can plumb the myths of our childhood is why I made that other iceberg video about the Ghost and Mr. Chicken, a film I'd seen so much as a kid that my mind conjured meanings beyond the pale of the filmmakers. In a way, it was my own experiment and homage to Dali's tragic myth of Millais Angeles. It would be really wonderful if more people used these faculties of the mind to take their experiences and the things they consumed as kids and transform them into something new that no one else could have. That is really the secret of the Paranoiac critical method, and why Super Mario 64 is a myth 25 years in the making.